Hey guys, it's Otaking Live here. Today we're going to do a little bit of a story time today. Story times are always pretty interesting to listen to, I guess. And for someone who's into anime and gaming like me, you might be interested in hearing how I started in the anime side of things. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit of today. When I got into anime, it was about roughly, dating myself here, but about 20 years ago. I was in high school, around grade 11, I believe. That's when I actually got into anime and manga and everything associated with it. I became hooked, first steps to otaku, ness. So, I'd always known I'd liked Japanese designs, comics, graphics. What pretty much I got into it initially was through Nintendo games. The original Nintendo. I remember I'd play Life Force, and there'd be those. I believe it was Life Force, and there'd be the anime cut screens. The Japanese games, and I used to just love the artwork. That's how I became an anime fan, was just from the artwork alone. A lot of fans, nowadays they only care about the best art, shiny, pretty. I don't really care as long as it's, Japanese beautifully drawn art. I'm happy. So, anyways, back to the day. What happened was when I was in about grade 11, Sailor Moon came on TV. And I was on a big cartoon kick at the time. I was watching like all the cartoons that were on TV at the time. But when I started watching Sailor Moon, and I can still remember this stupid episode that it was the one with Amy or Mercury or whatever, and she gets that boyfriend, Melvin or something, I think his English name was, and she has to fight that monster that's made up of like math utensils or math things, if I'm remembering correctly. And I remember I watched that episode three times straight, right back to back. I don't know, it clicked and I fell in love with it. From that point, I started recording Sailor Moon like crazy. Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball. I started watching all my, finding all the old Dragon Balls off TV. Dragon Ball Z, uh, Monster Hunter was on, Digimon. I started recording everything off VHS tapes. Like I just started recording everything. I remember I had like 18 6 8 hour, what was it, EP tapes of just anime that, I used to watch over and over and over again, because this was the day before, the internets, and anime wasn't easy to find. So when I started collecting legitly, um, my first two owned VHS tapes I can still remember were Eight Man After, and I think it was Volume 3 of Crying Freeman. Um, I got them at some little shop locally, and it just blew my mind they were there, and I had to have them. So those were my first two owned. My very first anime that I saw on VHS, my grandmother actually rented, and it was just before I got into anime, and it was Akira. And that blew my mind. I still remember going to school and telling all the kids that there was this cartoon that had such violence and nudity and everything else, and people couldn't believe it. That was a time where you just didn't see that kind of stuff. So I started getting the bug, and I had to now collect like crazy. So what I did, again, old days, I would go through every newspaper, all the newspapers, and I would cut out every little anime insert. I remember when Ghost in the Shell came to the theaters in the city. I would go through them all, and I would cut out everything I could find. I would collect it all. I'd scrapbook it all. And you got to remember, this was, anime was almost non-existent at this time. I'd have to beg my mom, or get a ride up to the city again to go to the mall, the big ones, where I could buy comic form, manga. I remember it was Oh My Goddess, You're Under Arrest, Gunsmith Cats. Those were some of the initial manga series I was collecting in comic book form. Now remember, this was comic book form. These are 25, 30 page, issues that were $4 or $5 each. And I mean, we're talking in today for like one of the manga books, 300 pages for what are they, $10, $15. To get that much content in comic book form, you'd be looking at almost $48 to get 300 pages in comic book form. So anyone that complains about manga being too expensive, they can shut up, because it ain't like it used to be. Same with anime itself. I know a lot of people are digital. I have Crunchyroll, I watch it, but mostly I'll still buy. I go on rightstuff.com and I'll buy a lot of Blu-ray sets, and I'll usually spend a couple $100 there every time I go there. So back in the day, in VHS, it was subbed or dubbed. You didn't get both. It was one or the other. And the VHS tapes were about $50 each. And I remember Ranma 1/2 was out, and it was 2 episodes a tape. Sure, they could put 4 on, but I mean, I think because anime was so new that they had to be as chintzy, to make their money. So I remember to collect something like Ranma 1/2, subbed and or dubbed, you couldn't, unless you were rich, you couldn't have both. It was something like $800. It was like $800 to $1,000 just because of just 2 volumes of tape. And I mean, it took up like half a wall unit in itself. I used to just, I'd go to the early conventions and try and buy them there. I used to do a lot of trading through the mail. Fansubs stuff, you used to be able to buy them. You'd pretty much just pay the tapes and postage. And I used to buy Fansub tapes from people putting them out. And these would always be 3rd, 4th, 5th generation. They were blurry, they were fuzzy. The audio was terrible. This was a time to live in, I tell you. And I used to trade tapes with people in. I remember I had someone in France, I had someone in the UK, I had someone in Australia. I had a lot of people around the world. A lot of people in the US trading tapes. Just every other weekend, I'd get 10 tapes in the mail, and I'd record 10 tapes and send them out. That's how Fansubs used to get put out back in the day. And then this was the time of, in the back of the comics, there'd be the pen pal section, and we would write each other, and this is how you talk to other anime fans, was writing them out of the pen pal section in comics. And I actually got quite a few. I had a little following, and in high school I put out a little anime newsletter, and I used to get fan art from them, and I'd publish all their fan art in it, and I'd send it all out. And it used to be called Otaking's Anime Planet, and I used to be in conjunction with a couple magazines, and if I find them, which I know I still have them all, I mean, I have all this scrapbooking stuff as a collector. I mean, I still have it all. And the only thing I did get rid of some of was a lot of my comic form manga. It was just taking up too much space. I replaced it. I got the smaller, regular graphic novel size, and a lot of my VHS tapes. I still have a VHS player, but I prefer to watch the DVDs or Blu-ray. I still have some VHS, obviously, because they were never released on DVD or Blu-ray. But anyways, if I ever find any of my old stuff, I can always, do another one where I can showcase it if anyone's interested in seeing it. Those were some of those days, I tell you. And when I started going to conventions, I mean, that's when I would usually meet up with a lot of these people. They'd come from, all over the world to go to these conventions, and we'd all meet up. And it was always awkward as hell. And this was the old days of anime, too. Everybody was, the otaku term or, nerd term fit a little bit better, in those old days. Nowadays, it's so mainstream and blown out. I mean, everybody's into it, but back then you were hardcore if you were into it. And I always remember there was this one guy I met, and I always thought I always remember going on, wow, like another a cool guy in anime. What blew my mind. And and then as time progressed, it got easier to get. More people got into it. Things blew up. Naruto, Bleach, all that came out, and then now it is what it is. Um, but that was me growing up in the non-digital anime age, and I'm gonna do another one for games as well. Just my life, a bit of my early life story on gaming as well for another day. And then I might even get into a little bit of another episode, because this one's probably already long enough, of the now internet age of my anime collecting, and the hurdles and how I collect now. It's obviously a lot different than almost 20 years ago. But what I will say is, though, for anybody watching that still struggles with being a fan, even 20 years ago when I was in school, I never really got bothered for being an anime fan. Some people obviously just didn't get it. Some still don't. But they were always pretty cool. Nobody really bothered me. It was kind of nice. Except one funny story was a Japanese exchange student was over there. I think that this was when I was in about grade 12. I still wasn't cosplaying yet. I still thought that was super weird. My very first con, I was scared of cosplayers. But he came over, and man, he used to give it to me. He used to be like, "Oh, I'll introduce you to Sailor Moon," and all this stuff, and I was always like, "Oh man," he was always busting my balls for that, and that was a good time. But you know what? This video is probably already long enough. It's going to take me 16 hours to upload it, so I'm going to finish that off now. And subscribe, like, comment. I'm just starting, but I want to get some of these life stories out there as well. It's the weekend now, so this will be a special episode, and then next week look forward to another anime spotlight and another extreme version. Check the extreme versions only if you're interested in a non-family friendly, more stupid version. Let me know what you think, what's better. I don't know. I'm just trying things out for now, and talk to you later.